Hi everyone, this is Patricia and I'm excited to be guesting for the Altenew Dahlia or Dahlia, depending on which area of the globe you're from, how you pronounce that, blog hop. This stamp set is gorgeous. The flower has 4 different layers and the leaves have 3, and it comes with this pamphlet that will show you different combinations of ink, and it also shows you how to layer the stamp. Now I've done several here. I've done some in an orange or a peachy kind of color and some in a more of a pink tones, and then I've done the leaves 2 different ways. One, using the Reflections paper pad, I stamped onto that in the first and the third stamp layer, and then I did stamp all 3 of the layers by themselves in the same colors. It just gives me a different little option there. I like the way it looks. Now you can see I've stamped also the first layer of the leaves and the flower on vellum, and then I used the die cuts and die cut several leaves and flowers. I wanted, as a scrapbooker, I like to have my supplies ready to go, because as I'm working on a project like this, I can just easily grab it and just start playing around and figuring out how I want it to go. I'm doing a traveler's notebook insert. I've got 2 different pieces of cardstock. I've got a white and a pale gray. Going with an asymmetrical type look. I'm going with the pattern paper. I've layered that pretty pink reddish kind of paper underneath, and then this paper is on top at an angle. And when I place it on the left side, I decide instead of matching it to the right side, I angle it a little bit more, giving even a little bit more of an asymmetrical look. Now, I'm really kind of inspired by that look because of the photo. I picked out this photo first based on the inspiration of this sentiment from the stamp set. It's about being brave. And this was my daughter's very first ballet competition. And so anyway, back to the design is because since this is ballet and she's got her left hand down, her right arm up, I'm really playing on that for the whole overall design. Now, even though this was her ballet competition, she's taken center stage, of course, for this project and this story. I want the flowers to really stand out. I really want them to be seen, and it goes so well with the whole look. I purposely changed that photo to black and white. There was nothing wrong with it in color, but I really wanted a little bit more of a dramatic, girly, definitely since it's ballet, vintage, almost a shabby chic look, but the flowers really, really are going to help with this. And I wasn't sure how I was going to place this, but as I just start laying them out, I like them kind of along the bottom here. I'm going to place a few of those leaves, and I just really I'm liking how this is looking. So I'm going to continue laying these out, and I'm going to go ahead and mark where I want my journaling on the left. And you'll see in a little bit, my journaling ends up being a little bit crooked. And I think it's kind of funny because I think I must have been going with the angle of the pattern paper. And at first, I was going to change it. And then I was like, I am imperfect, so I'm just going to leave it as it is. And it worked out just fine. So I'm going to continue. I'm going to adhere some of these flowers with my ATG gun. And there's my little bit of crooked journaling. And some of these are going to be with foam adhesive to give it a little bit of dimension. Now this traveler's notebook spread has I want it to create a light, airy feel to it. So it's not super, super heavy. Definitely the right side is heavier because of the pale gray cardstock and that reddish pinkish pattern paper. And then I've got a lot going on at the bottom with the flowers. But I do want to add a little bit of something at the top. So I'm going to add one of the leaves at the top. I'm going to stitch it into place with my sewing machine and go along that edge of the pattern paper. I'm going to flip that pattern paper up. You'll see in a little bit. And then I'm going to adhere underneath that sewn in leaf. I'm going to add one of the flowers in there. So that's going to bring attention to my journaling, and it's also pointing back down to that diagonal towards my daughter. with the way she's posed for ballet. So I'm just going to finish this up, add a little bit more here and there. I'm going to bring in another Altenew stamp it's invisible numbers, and I'm going to add December at the top right. And then I'm going to add some of these enamel dots. It's not just dots, it's dots, stars, and hearts. And then I'm going to add, I believe it's called Finstone Decorative Embellishment. It's like a little doily, but they're so gorgeous. I could use every one of these up. And so I'm trying to, I think I'm secretly kind of hoarding them. But I'll get the most use out of it by cutting it in half, and then I'm going to adhere it on either side of that photo. They come in a antique gold and they come in a brighter gold color. I'm using more of the antique gold here. And then I'm going to go ahead and use, I wasn't sure if I was, but I'm going to use some of the vellum flowers and leaves that I had stamped out. I'm going to attach one of the leaves at the top, and then I'm going to attach one of the vellum flowers here and then on the right side. And then that will finish this up after I have everything else stamped. Now after I did this, I did 4 more cards. Because after you have stamped, especially when you're doing these Build-A-Flowers, it's really a good idea to stamp multiple out, especially if you have a stamping tool. A good way to get the most and get a lot of them stamped quickly is like here I have a sheet that's about 2.5 by 3. You want to kind of get the size of your stamp. And if you have a stamping tool like this, you put it in the corner, and then when you start stamping, you can stamp multiple times. Like if I had 4 or 5 or even 10 of these sheets that were cut to 2.5 by 3, I can quickly stamp these out. So I'd start with the first layer, and then once you have that second layer matched up, you only have to match it and line it up once, is what I love about a stamping tool like this. So you match it up, you get it all lined up, you're taking that time. Now you can go ahead and stamp multiple images. So it's really a nice little trick. I've seen some of the other card designers do this, and it really is, I think it's one of the best tips that they could give, especially for these layered flowers like this, these Build-A-Flower layers. So I'm just briefly showing what I'm talking about. I'm not going to go through all the stamping because I actually did 4 cards after I did that project. All that stamping, and then I've done these die cuts. I just kept going. And of course, these are great to save for other projects later. I even include some of these in my daughter's lunch notes. I like to attach some of the pretty flowers and things. It just adds a nice little touch. So for this card, I have all the die cuts on that gray pale cardstock, and I've attached some twine onto this pattern paper with foam adhesive to help get it into place. So I have a nice textured background, and I have texture and color with the pattern paper and the twine. My sentiment, I'm going to stamp on some more of the gray pale cardstock and cut that strip, and then attach it to the top of that pattern paper, and then add some foam adhesive so that it's level on the card panel side. And that will finish up that project. And then I grab another piece of gray pale cardstock because it's on my desk, and I still have some more of those white die cut flowers and leaves, but in this case I'm using more of the flowers, and I have a smaller piece from my card panel. So I'm going to place these, and then I want my sentiment to be kind of in the middle, so I adjust the flower just a tad bit so that I can position that there. And then I'm going to use the first layer of the smaller flower to emboss in white in the center there. So I have all white flowers and have a little bit of contrast there with the stamping and the embossing from the cardstock die cuts. Now I'm going to use another piece of the pattern paper from the Reflections collection as another card panel. I'm going to trim just a little bit of these flowers, but I want some of them that can. I want them to hang over a little bit. So I'm going to leave those as is to add some layers to this. Now I was going to really leave this clean and simple, but I grabbed a hold of my jar of sequins, which used to be color organized, and I'm sorry that I mixed them all up, but that's okay. And it ended up being kind of fun to add some color and texture to this card. It was something out of my comfort zone, but I went with it anyway. And for the other card, you can see I added the vellum flower and the leaf to it and added just a couple of sequins to that. Now this next card, this is the next card panel. This one's going to be in white, and I'm using my stamping tool to quickly stamp on either side of that card panel. I'm going to use some more of those die cut flowers in the white cardstock, and I'm going to ink pink onto this as the first layer. Then the cardstock sheet that I used to die cut all the flowers and the leaves, I'm going to use that as a stencil on top of all of this and go on top of it with orange ink. Now just keep in mind, if you try this, you know, if you were to use yellow ink and then blue ink, you would probably get green as you're using this next level or next layer of color. So keep that in mind as you do this. So I really did like the look of this. Once it comes off, you take the stencil off and the mask off, and it's just really a cool look to the background. I stamped all 4 layers of the flower, but I went with a bolder color, and then I embossed in gold the sentiment on black cardstock. This last card, I used a black cardstock panel, and I did some white embossing with that first layer of the flower. And my ink pad for clear embossing did not do well on here, so I'm using my bottle of liquid embossing with a brush. And this was actually more of the look that I wanted. I'm painting it on in certain areas because I'm using a heavier, it's like a distress embossing enamel. And it really gives a nice, it's actually called shabby pink, so it goes really well with this look. So I was really inspired by this stamp set. I created the softness of the layers of the inks I chose of stamping onto the vellum, creating a background with just white cardstock die cut from the dies, a simple white embossing on cardstock, and more bolder with the inks that I chose to show those layers of the flower, and then doing some creative embossing. So I hope this inspires you to see how versatile this stamp set is, and thank you so much for watching.